Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure to have all of you guys coming here to Sameem. Basically, Sameem is the story of our culture. Sameem is the Arabic word which means essence in English. Essence means the true spirit behind and beyond everything in the UAE. We have three different people in the UAE. The people who used to live in the mountains, the people who used to live in the deserts, and those who used to live on the coast. And because we didn't have a lot of resources back in the past in the UAE, we learned to use the essence and to take the opportunity to find the resources from around us. The United Arab Emirates has a lot of cultures and a lot of traditions. It's absolutely a pleasure for me to get this opportunity to allow you to explore the meaning of Sameem and show people how we live here in the United Arab Emirates. So I'd like to tell you more about how we live here in the mountains. If you realize and if you touch the surface of this house, you're gonna realize it's not made of cement, it's only made from stone. And the reason why the mountains homes are actually only made from stones, so that there would be a bit of space between the layers of the stone so that the air would be able to come inside to cool the place. And up here, this is where we would actually store the food. We would keep the food here, and moving on to the very next part, this is actually the pottery. This is a handmade pottery, and this is where we would store the water, and the pottery would actually help us to keep the water cool. Now I'm going to show you how our grandmothers, they actually prepare the breads. We actually use the wheat, and then our grandmothers would grind the wheat. This is the final representation of what the bread actually looks like at the very end. Now moving on to the second part of the mountains. Back in the past, it was very difficult for us to get access to the water. So our grandfathers and grandparents came up with a very creative idea. And they made a network of channels, and the network of channels was used for the purpose of irrigation. Water would be transported from one place to another place. And how water was transported was by the use of this pottery. Usually, the pottery is made of two different things. So this is made from mud and water. Now, they come in different sizes and they come in different shapes, and that would depend on what use you're going to use it for. So say for example, we've got this pottery. This is actually handmade pottery. The first use of the pottery is to store the water and to keep it cool for the next 1 or 2 or 3 days. So this is where I'm from the mountains. Now I'm going to take you over with me to our very next destination in the desert. 70% of the land in the UAE is actually composed from the desert. We've got people in the desert who have big tents, and we have people that have small tents. And there are so many things that our great grandmothers would actually weave. Those are actually handmade by our grandmothers.
هذا أوراق النخل. هذا يوم طلعنا وشفنا أهالينا، شفنا هذا أوراق النخل استخدموه. هو هذا عندهم الغالي، هو هذا عندهم الأصل، وإحنا حكومتنا أمرتنا على هذا الشيء. أنا هذا أسوي أخدم من يوم عمري 7 سنين. أنا هذا تعلم ماما تخدم. يوم يصير ماما مني ومني أنا قبطت الشغل هذا. يجيبوا طلاب مع المدرسة أعلمهم السفافة، أعلمهم التلي، أعلمهم كل شيء. أتمنى إن شاء الله تعالى عيالنا الصغار والكبار يتعلموا هذا المهرة، هذا الحرفة، والحرفة الثانية اللي أكبر بعد منها إن شاء الله تعالى. شكرا.
So the Emirati people who used to live in the desert back in the past, they would go hunting using the falconry. So this is something that is very special and symbolizes something very important for those Bedouins who live in the desert. So this is the falcon that was used to go hunting for rabbits, and even up to this current moment it's used to enter different exhibitions. Here we've got the camels. The camel was the only mode of transportation for Bedouins who used to live in the desert. And we used to believe the people that used to live in the coast are considered to be the luckiest people in the UAE because they had a lot of access to water, and they were able to work in the pearl industry and in the fields of fishing. So we had the fishing traps which were handmade. They were weaved by our fathers and our great grandfathers, and we call this gargur. It's made from very special palm tree leaves.
هذا العسق من النخل وأنا قاعد أشرخ الحين على أساس أبتدي بعدين الشغل وأسوي القرقور من السعف النخيل. هذا عريض لازم يسوي شوي الله شوفين هذا استوى 6 2 2 2 6 حبات بداية أول بداية. هذا نحن ليش على أساس ناخذ قياسنا من هنا هذا نوفيه ناخذ لي قياس من هنا نوفيه يكون يكمل معنا الحين هذا نجيبه وين فوق هذول. هذا الله خلق هذا الشيء الله خلقنا نعيش من وراء هذا النخل ونبني من هذا النخل نسوي لنا بيت من هذا ما كان عندنا طابوق ولا حصر كله من النخل. هذا النخل أمنا الأم تتجمع وتجيب تاكل نحن ناكل الحمد لله.
This boat is a very special boat. It would take the Emiratis around 9 to 10 months just to build the boat, and they would actually get the wood from Africa and they would actually get the rope from Bahrain. This is going to be done by the end of Expo roughly. It's going to be ready, and this is actually the final representation of what it's going to look like at the very end. We have something very special as well. We have the delicious Emirati traditional treat. So here we've got the Emirati lugemat. So it's a traditional treat, so feel free to come over and try the lugemat. The lugemat is a very delicious Emirati treat, and usually it's made from rose water, eggs, sugar, a pinch of salt and yeast, and most of the time we use the honey syrup with it, and this is what it would look like as a final result. So basically this is how we welcome people in the UAE. Usually you would serve them with a coffee, and the Emirati coffee is called qahwa. So once you drink the coffee, if you've had enough and you're satisfied with what you drank, you're gonna shake the cup a bit, you're gonna tilt it. So this is gonna signify that you've had enough. But if you don't shake the cup, he's gonna keep on standing and he's gonna serve you more. Now he's gonna serve you with the dates as well. So now here, we've got a henna artist. The henna is part of the Emirati culture and tradition, and most of the time, the Emirati ladies, they use the henna during ceremonies, if it's for a birthday or a wedding, let's say for example, but especially used during Eid, which is the celebration for Muslims. As you can see, as of the current moment, I'm wearing the Emirati burqa. Now this burqa is very well known, especially in the United Arab Emirates. It's part of the culture and traditional here in the UAE. And here in Sameem, we try to allow people to explore the cultures and traditions and how we used to live. So the reason that women would wear this burqa is to hide their beauty. And it has also become part of the traditions and culture. And in the UAE, we take very good care of our culture and traditions. So our great-grandmothers would pass this tradition of wearing the burqa to their daughters, and their daughters would pass it on to us, just to keep the heritage and culture and tradition of the UAE, which is what we want people to explore here in Sameem.